From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. Keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for all the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't yet, please go leave a review. If you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or Spotify or wherever you get it, go leave that review or tell others about the podcast. We really appreciate it. And if you watch it, which I know a very small percentage of you do, but if you do, and you love seeing my face or Jimmy's face, go leave a comment on YouTube or go subscribe on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas to you, Paul.
Yeah,
this is a
true.
great episode. Yeah, by the time people hear this, it'll be sometime over the holiday. I would say I'm doing better, but I'm trying to work over here, and I'm getting nonstop out of office messages and just dead replies. So I guess I'm the only one that doesn't enjoy time with family. No, I'm kidding. But it is.
What does that say about me?
Work.
Is what I would like to know.
Yeah.
I feel like this is you, calling out your employer here.
No, not so much. But with the forced time that I've had to take away from work just from non-response, I was able to binge watch through The Witcher season 2, and I'm very excited for what's in store for that franchise. So I will say that.
I'm curious, how did you like it?
So my fiance Marie and I actually rewatched season 1 because it had been so long since we saw the first one, and I'm also trying to play a little bit of The Witcher 3 in my free time, which I haven't played in about 3 weeks. So I'm about 3 hours into that opening kind of scene, but like that intro tutorial. But season 2 was really interesting. I think it set the stage for not just rather, if they do run with it for 7-8 seasons, I think season 2, you'd go back to and say, this is what kind of started it all. Season 1 was really acquainting the audience, the viewers, with who these characters are and what this world is. Season 2 now is kind of explaining why everything's so important and what the stakes really are.
Can we just talk about how crazy it is that The Witcher and Arcane are basically the biggest shows on Netflix, right? Like, if you look at the world of quote unquote traditional entertainment, the two biggest shows on the planet are video game related, and Arcane, I think, is now number 1 of all time. Like, I saw an article talking about it's now surpassed Stranger Things. It's like it is literally number 1 of all time on Netflix. Have you watched Arcane, by the way?
So I've watched a few episodes of Arcane, just more as a fan of Riot than anything else, because I never really dabbled in League. I play Valorant. I'm more of an FPS guy and an RPG guy.
I was just curious if you had sort of a comparison or like a view on one versus the other.
I can just say, as a fan of cinema and that kind of media, I think hats off to Riot for like an amazing production. The quality is great. The story is compelling. If I were a League player, I think I would be that much more entrenched in it, which is a pretty exciting thing. And it's incredible what they've been able to accomplish.
I will just say I did get a chance to watch some of The Witcher season 2 with my dad, and it is phenomenal. Like, it is so good. And I did get a chance before actually I left New York to watch a couple episodes of Arcane, and also so good. And so I'm blown away by what everyone's doing on the traditional media side. I think is just so cool with video game IP. It's one of those things where I'm curious what they do next, right? And I think some of the things that we're seeing, and this is a shameless plug for the live stream, which by the way we do every Wednesday night, guys. If you're a fan of the podcast, we do a live stream every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We stream it everywhere you get our content. So it's on Twitter, it's on LinkedIn, it's on YouTube, literally everywhere you get Business of Esports content, you can check out our live stream. And we cover all the news that we don't get to on the podcast anymore. But there was a story, I think, about, traditional entertainment and media companies just basically too late to the party in terms of buying video game IP, right? Like, or acquiring video game IP, which is an interesting, it's just an interesting twist, right? Because it used to be the games were the sideshow, right? Like Lord of the Rings was coming out, and so let's jam out like a quick Lord of the Rings game to go along with the launch of the movie, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now the game's driving the other way around.
Speaking of which, I heard great things about the Guardians of the Galaxy game also. One of my friends is really enjoying the story, and I got to check that out. But no, I mean, it's a well taken point in that the dynamic of media and what really is the nexus of what's cool is shifting, and kind of games taking, I think, the reign there, or the lead spot, and other things trickling down from that IP. So be really interesting to see what happens in the next 2 years. I think is a reasonable window to kind of keep a close eye on it, particularly with the Halo series that's coming out on Paramount Plus. I'm looking forward to seeing how that performs. And I think between those few case studies, The Last of Us coming to HBO, there's going to be a lot of really exciting content where my favorite part is just whenever I watch any of this, I look at my parents, or I look at, my fiance and her family, and I just go, that's a video game. Yeah, that was a game first. Yeah.
Now, our guest this week, by the way, and one of the reasons why we never make it to news on the podcast anymore is just the amazing lineup of guests we've had. Today's no exception. I would argue our guest today, I feel like, has got a name straight out of a video game. It feels like it should be a character, a lead character in a video game. We have none other than Johnny Ward, who is the CEO and co-founder of Damage, the esports agency. Johnny, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yes, between me and Jimmy Garada, Johnny Ward and Jimmy Garada, we could do some damage with our names.
I was going to say, I mean, Jimmy Barada looks straight out of a mob movie, if you ask me. We jokingly, call him Tommy Mozzarella because of how Italian his name sounds. But Johnny, look, I would love for you to give our audience a bit of your background, how you got into gaming, what you're focused on at Damage, what Damage does, just a bit of the Johnny and Damage story.
Yeah, sure. But first off, by the way, I went to the Arcane experience. I'm sorry, I got geeked out when you guys were talking about it before I jumped on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We had our whole team. We're 20 employees at Damage in our offices that are in downtown Los Angeles. We went to the Arcane experience, which was this, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's an immersive experience over the course of 30 days. So they have a couple shows per night. And it literally puts you into the world of Zon, and you're supposed to secure Shimmer as you speak to live action actors that are acting the parts of Arcane. It was pretty cool.
That's so cool. That sounds awesome. I mean, Riot just knows how to put on a show of any kind, right? Whether it's an esports event or an experience like this, that I think they really are leading the way. But that's so cool. Sorry to interrupt, Johnny. Go ahead. Would love some of the background story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Johnny Ward. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Damage, the esports agency. I've got 25 years of experience working with AAA game developers and Fortune 1000 brands. And basically, Damage is a creative marketing agency. And we focus on assisting brands on how to navigate the gaming, esports, and streaming space and effectively engage those communities. So our agency's core capabilities include creative and design, strategy, influencer activations, tournament support, branded content production, et cetera. However, first and definitely foremost, our expertise is designing strategies that actually effectively integrate our brand clients into the world of gaming, esports, and streaming. So that's where we start. So that's a little bit about us. A little bit more though, because sometimes it's nice to hear about the foundation, and really the foundation is is the co-founders, and we were founded by several top experts from across the gaming and esports industry. Three of my fellow co-founders are lifelong friends who come from this space. So Brian Kim is the visionary behind our streaming analytics platform that uses AI and machine learning that we built in-house for our clients. Tyrone Wang is our CMO and a very seasoned endemic hardware marketer for PC brands, formerly with iBuyPower. And he also helped launch the first collegiate esports program in the US at UC Irvine, which I don't know if it was you, Paul, or you, Jimmy, that has a hand at UCI.
Yeah,
Jimmy.
I'm an instructor over there. That's wonderful overlap. I can't wait to learn more about that.
Yeah. And then William Wu, he's been designing in-game art for AAA game developers in North America and Asia. And then there's Paul Sams, who's a lifelong friend of mine, and he's the former 20-year COO of Blizzard. So that's kind of the backdrop and the foundation of who we are. And basically, we saw this big vacuum of great agency work in terms of both brand strategy and creative in gaming, esports, and streaming. And you'll hear me say those three things together because they're different. So we launched Damage back in 2016.
I mean, Johnny, I would love a bit of the insight in terms of how you guys got together to decide, this is what we wanted to focus on, right? Like, what was the sort of the thing that made you go, we have to attack this space and this space specifically?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, basically, this is back in 2016. So if you remember, in 2016, esports was kind of a thing. You kind of heard of it, but you'd have to really be a gamer to actually hear that term. And then in 2017, so fortunately we timed it right, it exploded and everyone was using that term esports, if you remember, 4 or 5 years ago. But it was even a joke. Like one of my friends at a major global ad agency, they didn't know anything about gaming and esports. They're very good at what they do, but they didn't know anything about gaming and esports. But their clients keep asking them. So literally he put on a slide where they were pitching different things, he just put esports ! And then he didn't have anything else. He just moved on. But he wanted to address it. That's how crazy it was of the esports being a thing. But what we saw basically is again, before Damage, great agency work in gaming was very limited. All of the work was either coming from a traditional ad agency with no experience in gaming, who were applying this very old thinking to this new frontier. And they were very much scratching the surface of what could be done in gaming. Or the work was coming from a group of gamers who had really no idea how to deliver a polished strategy and a creative to a big global brand who expects a certain level of professionalism. So what we did is we combined that. And just to kind of explain that a little bit deeper is we're different from our competitors because we've successfully united experts in gaming and esports world with experts in the global branding and advertising world. So for example, our executive creative director, John Runkle, he has over 20 years of experience across gaming, entertainment, CPG, and he's been at Leo Burnett Chicago, BBD New York, Shia Day, these major global agencies. And he's created countless product launches for Nintendo from the GameCube all the way up to the Switch, and also overseen multiple titles from 2K games for many years, including NBA 2K. And then Chris Kolvik is our head of strategy, and he splits his career between the client side and the agency side, but he oversaw the global e-commerce strategy for Procter & Gamble. And then finally, Andrew Dubois, at least on the leadership front, Andrew Dubois is our head of brand management, and he's got over 15 years of ad agency experience. So 72 and Sunny, Anomaly, Shy at Deutsch, and he's worked on AT&T, Starbucks, Vonage, Pizza Hut, and he actually helmed the 360-degree rebrand for Diet Coke. So the reason, sorry for going into detail of who our leadership is. Yeah, but it's important to know that those are the two worlds that we're really at odds with one another. And what we've done is, and it wasn't easy, it's taken us 5 years to do. And fortunately 2021 was a big year for us. And so we melded those worlds together successfully.
Johnny, can you talk to, how you feel things have evolved with brands over the years you've been doing this with Damage? Like, I'm always curious as to what I'll call the education gap, right? Like, how well do brands understand gaming? How well do they understand the opportunity? Like, I don't know if you can talk to, like, are brands massively more sophisticated now in 2021 than they were in 2020? Does everyone require hand holding still? Are some of the brands thinking of having expertise in house, right? Which happens in the agency world, right? Like, every big brand has a man or woman who's doing programmatic advertising of some kind, right? Like, that's there. And so I'm just curious how you've seen the landscape in terms of brands and where they're at in terms of understanding how that has evolved.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. And there was a lot of questions in there. So I'm gonna address it as best I can. So it basically, to address, are they more sophisticated in 2020 versus 2021? It depends on the brands, right? So let me back up. Our clients fall into three different categories. Endemic brands, which are obviously any product needed to play the actual video game. So anything, native to gaming and esports, console, keyboard, and everything. And our clients in that category include ASUS, Turtle Beach, Rocket, and Intel, actually, for which we served as their global gaming and esports agency of record for 2.5 years. And Intel was a big client and a very heavy lift, but they're amazing. And everybody learned a lot in running global campaigns in gaming. And then the second category is non-endemic brands, which is probably more of what you were referring to, which is every other product and service, energy drinks, apparel, et cetera. So our clients in that category include T-Mobile, Subaru, and TikTok. And then the third one is game developers and publishers. And clients in this category are Blizzard, Konami, Square Enix, Ubisoft. So basically, the campaigns are maybe different for different clients, right? But the paradigm is the same. And this is where I'm at, hopefully answering your question, is how do we educate, or at least where do we start? Because there is a big degree of education with brands, particularly non-endemic. So we'll stay in that category. But what we tell them is, look, because they hear gaming and esports, they're like, I think I want to do it, but I'm not sure. I don't get it. And it's a big obstacle to overcome. So we break it down. It's like, look, everyone is a gamer. Your audience is no longer 12 to 18-year-olds. Your audience is everyone. To us, it's comical to ask someone if they play games now, since over 238 million Americans identify themselves in 2021 as a gamer. Literally on a survey, we'll write down, I'm a gamer. It's like asking someone if they listen to music or they watch movies. Of course they do. So this is an important distinction about damage. We understand the generation of Gen Z and millennials for whom gaming, esports, and streaming isn't just a side hobby. It's just woven into the fabric of their lifestyles. So, and this is the streaming generation, and streaming is how they communicate. It's how they consume entertainment. It's how they play games, and that's where we start education-wise with the non-endemics. Then they're like, okay, that's the target we want to hit. We see how gaming, esports, and streaming is a good vehicle to hit that Gen Z millennial. Let's have a conversation.
Can you elaborate on the non-endemics excitement in perhaps reinvesting in esports after you take them through perhaps like the first run, the first activation, or however you want to introduce them into this world? What can you say about how they've received that, and telling whether or not they double down on that investment, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me bring up. Let's see. Let's think of a non-endemic example. Well, we'll take the Subaru Invitational, for example. So Subaru, they actually were the first North American automaker that launched into esports, and we launched them in esports several years ago with a custom tournament called the Subaru Invitational, and it was completely owned by Subaru and produced by Damage. So the objective was to increase awareness for their 2018 Impreza model that was geared towards this younger millennials, recent college grads, et cetera. And so the custom tournament was very significant back in 2018. It wasn't being done. And even now in 2021, it's a very tried and true initiative of getting brands involved in gaming. So what we did for them, I'll tell you what we did, and then I'll tell you, their reaction is we identified the right game title that aligned best with their target consumer, which is Counter-Strike Global Offensive, CSGO. It was a legacy game, and it hits the 20-somethings that we wanted. We avoided the racing sim games because it didn't have the reach that they wanted. So that's something that's important, because if an auto brand comes to you, if an agency says, "Yep, we're going to put you in a racing sim game," that's not looking at it holistically, and that's what possibly like a traditional sports marketing agency or a traditional creative agency that doesn't really understand the nuances of gaming and esports it would do. We step back and we like, look, it looks like you should be in Rocket League. It looks like you should be in some kind of racing sim, but what you really need to be is CS:GO, because that hits your KPIs. So this is a national play, as they wanted to target only North America. So we chose these certain pro teams. So we secured the top U.S. professional CS:GO teams, Team Liquid, Cloud9, etc. We designed and managed the online production on Twitch. We handled all the aspects of their social strategy, and it resulted in the most engagements ever in the history of Subaru USA's Twitter for a single campaign. So
Wow.
hopefully, I think that was you, Jimmy, who asked the question.
Yes.
They're blown away, because what's happening and is just sometimes they're just getting these brands are being directed improperly on what is actually possible in gaming and esports. And if you go right to, hey, sponsor an esports team, well, that could be expensive, and is that the right choice for them? If you
Right.
want to go sponsor an esports team and you just want to broker a deal for a multi-million-dollar deal, sure, your traditional sports marketing agency could apply that brokering deal knowledge over to this. But if you want something nuanced, authentic, and I know we always hear that word, but in this case, it's the right
You
word.
must have come to my talk at the Esports Business Summit, Johnny.
Yes, I did actually. It was amazing, and I completely concur with what you were saying. And so basically, that's what you need, is to have someone that's going to direct you properly.
No, I think it's fascinating and obviously telling, like you said, the most impressions in any North American campaign ever, right? Incredibly exciting, and congrats on that work. I definitely want to compare and contrast that from this non-endemic angle with perhaps your work with Ubisoft and the Rainbow Six Siege North American Pro Esports League, and the work that you did with them, or any other example that you want to share. I know there's some Intel work with PC building. You guys do so many great things. I just would love to hear a little bit more about some of the other campaigns you've worked on, and how that was received, and the success that you provided for your clients.
Cool. Yeah. Reel me in if I start geeking out too much, because I love this stuff.
It's
Everybody,
why we're here.
okay, good. Everybody at Damage is very, very passionate. So sometimes I got to peel it back at dinner parties and whatnot for people who aren't in gaming. They think I'm crazy. So let's start with Ubisoft. So Damage is a creative agency of record for Ubisoft's Rainbow Six Siege North American Pro Esports League. So we're working with Ubisoft both in the US and Canada on this game. And our responsibilities for them include producing all the live content. So if you've ever watched, a match for R6 North American League, there's also European. Everything you see on the screen, from every minute detail, piece of creative, logo, etc., or any of the video content or speed interviews or whatnot, was produced in-house at Damage. So those were our responsibilities: producing live content and then monitoring and activating their social as well. So we have experience working on these social communities of Gen Z millennials who are watching these pro gamers compete in this league. A couple of content series that were kind of fun and would love for you guys to look it up, or I could shoot you the links or whatnot, was R6 and 60 and Battle Prep. And basically they're different type of speed interviews with the pro gamers, in which and we wanted to humanize them with this very compelling lifestyle content, and that's because I think whether it's traditional sports or esports and gaming, when you peel back the curtain and you look at the adversity that they go through to become these elite athletes, and adversity is like, your parents want you to go to college and you don't want to go to college. That's a big life moment for them. And so they're really compelling individuals, and sometimes that doesn't come out because you just see them with their headsets on and crushing it at R6 or whatever game title they're playing. But we wanted to humanize them, so we did that. We probably designed about 1,000 pieces of bespoke creative assets, and then our job was just kind of translating that to the game so it could reach a broader audience. And fortunately, things have gone very well in 2021. And the results were we had 155% increase in viewership. And Ubisoft is probably the most amazing client that we've ever had. They're wonderful people, every one of them. Crazy.
Johnny, I want to push back a little bit on something, and that is, we're talking about endemics and non-endemic sponsors or brands, right? And my feeling always has been, I hate those words. I understand why we use them, but I hate those words because it makes it seem like some brands should be in esports and gaming, and some are like outsiders that sort of shouldn't be, right? Like it creates this artificial line between, a set of brands and another set of brands, when my simple view is everyone should be thinking about reaching the gaming audience because of really how untapped, how lucrative, right? There's all kinds of good reasons. They're young, they're digital savvy, right? All these good reasons. Is there anything that you do very different in your approach between one brand or another, and very different in the execution of a campaign with a non-endemic versus an endemic? Or is it really just the pitch process that's different?
Well, let me see if I understand your question. So first, I do appreciate the fact that you called out the endemic and non-endemic terminology. It's very clinical. And it's funny because we've had internal conversations like we don't necessarily mention those terms with our clients. It's more of an internal thing, but it does slip out, right? Endemic and non-endemic. Yeah. We haven't found a replacement for that. So it's more, it's more descriptive internally versus externally. But let me see if I understand your question. Basically, how do we approach endemics versus how do we approach non-endemics?
But more specifically, because I think the approach, the pitch part, naturally may be somewhat different. Where I'm interested is the execution any different? Do you focus on different things? Are you looking at different KPIs? Are you right? Like, is the execution part radically different if it's an endemic versus non-endemic brand?
Yeah, well, everything's a case by case basis. It's something could be dramatically different between two endemic brands or two non-endemic brands versus and non-endemic versus an endemic. I'm just going to use those words just because we're using them.
Yeah.
But I would say, yes, the prospecting process is definitely different. And it's definitely shorter for endemics, right? For obvious reasons. Endemics, there's two, I don't want to say obstacles. There's two missions in order to get a brand, regardless of what category it's in, to acknowledge that they need something. With endemics, they've been in it for 20 years or more. They understand gaming and esports better than anybody, and game developers, obviously. So that education, that first hurdle, if you will, or first mission of education is removed. So you can really get down to really great conversations much more quickly. When we're talking about non-endemics, first you have to educate them on, okay, here's kind of what gaming and esports is, and I know you've been told that it's this, but let me shed a little bit more light. And so they're nodding and they're understanding a little bit more and they're appreciating that education. And then it hits that wall of, okay, cool, thank you, but they don't know, and this sounds weird, and I'll explain. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know the potential of the massive potential of properly integrating their brand into gaming, esports, and streaming. It hasn't been on their radar. Their agencies haven't consulted them about it because they're doing what they do best, which is things outside of gaming and esports. So it doesn't really come up except for every so often where it's like, are you in gaming? Are you in esports? Are you in streaming? And they're like, well, no, because I don't know where to go with it. And that's a lot of our questions is, hey guys, I know I want to be into gaming and esports, but damage, where do I go and how do I launch? And so then it's just this exploratory process of saying, okay, what are your KPIs? How can we help you? Or not even that, is telling them what they're doing right now that is not correct in gaming and esports, or some opportunities missed because they're just not, they're not in that space. They're not allocating budget towards that space.
So fast forward from that, right? You've executed on the campaign. If you look back at all the campaigns you've done, whether it's Ubisoft, whether it's, Subaru, any of the sort of the list of campaigns you've done for brands in the gaming space, is there anything you can point to that says this is the reason we're successful, right? This is the thing that we do consistently well with every brand that leads to the success of the campaign? Like, is there one thing, Johnny, that you can point to that is sort of at the core of what Damage does really well?
So let me rephrase it. So basically, is there one thing that Damage
is there a secret sauce?
Hang our hat on that.
Yeah.
No. I wish there was, and I am relentlessly trying to find that secret sauce. And when I do, I'll let you know. But it's very there is no formula for this right now. And maybe there's different schools of thought, but here's just 24/7 speaking with brands and figuring things out. Everybody has it's so dynamic of what their KPIs are and what their restrictions are budget wise, or culture wise, or just like, do we want to get involved with violent games or whatnot? So to say there's this secret sauce, this is what we do great, is tough. But if how we show this though to our clients is we'll show them 3 or 4 quick case studies that says, here's what we've done with Ubisoft in game developer, as far as game developers, and how this it's not just, even though I'm speaking to you, Subaru, but I'm giving you a game developer analogy. Here's what we pull out of it, and here's what we can apply to a non-endemic strategy. And here's what we've done for Intel, Asus, Rocket, all endemic brands, but very much applicable to non-endemic. And then here's what we've done with TikTok, that is totally different. So I'm sorry to say, if you have the secret sauce, I'll pay you anything to have that. I have not found it, but it's just a collection of successes that we've been having, where we can put together a cohesive story and say, whatever your challenge is, we can handle it and here's examples of how we've handled this.
So this might be too Paul, if you permit me, Johnny, this might be too vague, so let me know. But how have those stories or those success stories, those challenges that you kind of share with your clients for prospective projects by highlighting previous successes, how has that changed over the past 5 years in terms of the things that you like to highlight, or what's becoming increasingly important to your clients, so that they know that not only have you done that recently, but also I'm just kind of curious what used to be important to them, versus today.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, so basically, how has our approach been with brands over the last 5 years, and how has been their reaction to these case studies? Does it sound right?
In general, yeah, but particularly also how that's changed, if at all, from the start to now. But yeah, definitely.
Oh man, it's changed dramatically. It is literally unrecognizable. In 2016, 2016 and 2017 was us with a constant carrot being dangled in front of our face. I couldn't, it took me a year and a half to figure out, and my partners to figure out, that we were getting taken advantage of. Everybody wanted to learn about gaming and esports because esports was that term, right? So for them, it was all about, hey, yeah, well, they took the call. So we were having calls with Toyota. I flew to Dallas, had in their massive, city that is their campus, and we pitched them gaming and esports. We had meetings with IMAX. I mean, you name it. We were getting meetings everywhere. And it's really exciting as an agency to get the phone call back and say, yes, we're willing to talk to you, because that in and of itself is very difficult. But we had something interesting, and people were recognizing that. However, what was happening is they just wanted an education to a certain level, but we're nowhere ready to buy. And we didn't know that, and they didn't tell us that. So it was very much an educational only for 2016 and 17 because nobody was ready to buy for the most part. You had your early adopters like Geico and Red Bull, et cetera, but very much so people were just kicking the tires and wasting our time. And then in 2018 and definitely 2019 and 20, we actually did close Intel again. So for 2.5 years, we're their global gaming and esports agency of record, and that took all of our resources. And so it was very much, we had several clients, two of which were small, one of which Intel was massive. And that's how it kind of changed a little bit. And then all of a sudden in 2021, after the pandemic and during in late 2020, definitely 2021, when online entertainment and streaming and gaming and esports exploded in a positive way because of the global pandemic, and was on every radar, particularly because traditional sports were eliminated for a long, long time. We've closed, we closed 10 new clients in the last 10 months. It's just been this onslaught of new business, and it's been amazing. So I guess to answer your question, how has it changed? 2016 and 17, we were screwed. There was nobody actively spending budgets, particularly not non-endemics, but even endemics were kind of doing the same thing they were already doing and whatnot. And then in 2017, 18, it started to, or 2018, 19, it started to get a little smoother. And then with the global pandemic, it exploded, and we're finding so much more interest from people that we either talked to years ago or we've never talked to because they never considered it, and now they're actively spending budget on it.
Johnny, I just wanted to go back to the secret sauce question, and because I think there was an implication there. I just want to make sure I understand. Is part of the implication there that you can't automate this stuff, like the influencer marketplaces that are popping up for gaming and esports, where it's like, hey, you're a brand, you put in your credit card, and we pair you with the influencers who are going to talk about your stuff on Twitch, and we report back that how many mentions you got on the Twitch stream. Like, there's a lot of these influencer marketplaces popping up that are focused on gaming and esports. Is the implication of what you said that all of this is really very custom, right? Like, all of it is, to be successful, has to be really tailored to the brand, and there's maybe no automated solution. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a couple of different analogies too, is that I use that may or may not hit home, but it's not only custom, it's holistic. And that word is sometimes overused, but it's right. It's spot on. Is what's happening is some brands are just, and this happened. This is interesting, right? So I'll call a brand and they'll see gaming, esports, and streaming, and they'll put me over to their media buyers. We're not selling media. We are selling bespoke campaigns and creative and design and strategy that will integrate your brand authentically into gaming, esports, and streaming, and engage those communities. We're not just logo slapping. That's kind of what happens a lot of is brands will come in, they're like, okay, well, let me check the box of gaming and esports because I know it's something I should do. So let me throw my logo over here. I'll buy a couple of ads on Twitch and call it a day. And then I could check it off and I could tell my boss. It's not going to go anywhere. And so what happens is they don't have success in that because they're doing it improperly. Then they're not blaming the agency per se that's advising them on that. They're blaming gaming, esports, and streaming industry as a whole. And that's what bothers me the most about people being misdirected by agencies that don't understand the nuances of gaming and esports, is because not only are they they're negatively affecting their own clients, but they're negatively affecting the overall perception of the success that you can have with gaming, esports, and streaming if done in a proper way. So where we go is, yes, there's no secret sauce. We go to them and say, you need a holistic strategy. And yes, influencers are a part of it, and possibly a sponsorship of a team or a league or whatnot, maybe could be a part of it. Or it can be a super cool activation that you might not have thought of before. So can I give you one more example of something? This one is a game developer. So is Konami, right? And to celebrate the 4th anniversary of their mobile game for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, we decided to dive deep into that very much beloved IP of Yu-Gi-Oh! And give that fan base a chance to play against one of their favorite characters. This was frowned upon by Japan. It was very difficult to push this through, but we were very confident, and the U.S. marketing team was very confident, and so we collectively got together and we put this together. So using Adobe Character Animator, we brought the character Seto Kaiba, who's the villain in Yu-Gi-Oh, to life with the human voice actor who actually plays him for the last 10 to 15, 20 years in the long running show, who wore a motion capture suit. So we then produced a number of digital films where Seto Kaiba taunted, literally flat out insulted the community to come take him on in this online Duel Links tournament that was live on Twitch. So that's something that they hadn't thought of, and they're a game developer, right? And it's probably not something that an agency or whoever, an entity or a brand that's used to kind of just slapping logos and buying media would even think of. But fortunately, we exceeded even the client's expectations on viewership and fan participation, and it was a huge success. So you got to think differently. You have to think out of the box with gaming and esports. The opportunity is there.
Can we talk about media buying for a second in the space? Because, one of the things I've heard, and I've heard this a few times, especially from people at esports teams, is, it's getting harder to sell, sponsorship deals to brands, because if you go back a year or two, right, brands were not sure what to do in the space, right? Like they knew they had to do something, so they throw a bit of money. There's a pocket, of money just to test new stuff, and they would throw a bit of money at esports and gaming or streaming, and it didn't really matter how it performed because it was a test, like you said, check a box, right? And as time goes on, these brands are getting maybe more sophisticated. The industry's maturing. It's easier to track performance and things like that. And now, in some ways it's become harder because there's more transparency. It's not such a black box. I don't know if you agree with that, Johnny. I'm curious to get your reaction to that.
So the question being, do I see that the agency has advanced in terms of analytics so that it's much more trackable and therefore maybe a good opportunity for brands because the prices are more aligned with reality?
Yeah, like I could make, like if I put my esports org owner hat on, right? Okay. 3 years ago, I might have been able to go to a brand and say, "Hey, we're Cloud9. We're the biggest esports team in the world. Like, give us $100,000 and we'll slap your logo on a jersey." Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many people see it or whatever. It's esports. It's cool. It's new, and brands would do it, right? And in some ways, agencies like Damage, maybe I would argue, if I'm the guy at Cloud9, are sort of spoiling our good ride here because you're coming in with, KPIs and this and that, and it's a little bit less of a black box and it's a little more transparent. And again, I'm more just looking to get your reaction to something like that, like as the space gets increasingly more sophisticated.
Yeah, well, it's going to happen. I think that it was kind of it was a fun run for a little while for esports orgs to kind of arbitrarily attach these pretty high dollar figures to sponsorships without maybe the bullet points, or the deliverables or deal points that would actually bring that ROI to a favorable position. It's natural for an industry, and this is great. It's a testimony to how gaming and esports is being propelled forward as a legitimate industry in the sense that analytics now need to be performed. One of the biggest complaints it's like, I don't even know what it means. Like in social media, I get it. I'm not going to get fired as a brand manager for a major consumer brand if I invest in social media because I could show all these analytics because it's been around for 12 years or however many, 15 years, 16 years. And now with streaming analytics and streaming broadcasts, it's really hard to track. So, well, we're a huge proponent of that, so much so that we actually, and I mentioned this a little bit, and I wasn't going to go into it, but a very topical view of it, we were sick of it too, and we built an AI and analytics tool that basically using vision recognition, voice recognition, chat sentiment analysis, and in different languages, we could track how a logo and how a brand is being perceived in real analytics in real time during these broadcasts. So what that means, and this has never been done before, all in one tool. So what basically that means, and the reason why we created it, and it's got far like every technology platform, it's always has more applications where you didn't think that it could work that way, and unfortunately it kind of does, and the market will adapt to it. We did it because we wanted to see how our creative was performing. We wanted to see, if we're sponsoring this streamer, we wanted to see how people are responding to our copy, our writing, responding to our creative, responding to our video content. And if the chat sentiment analysis was negative, we could actually pivot in real time, which has never been able to do before. So we're all
Johnny,
about
before I get to our last segment here, what's the one piece of advice or the one message you would want to leave with, we have a lot of people who work for brands or in marketing or, who listen to the podcast. What's like that one piece of advice you would leave to them as they're maybe looking at the gaming space or have already done stuff in the gaming space? What's the one thought you'd leave them with?
I would say that anyone can talk the talk, but when you're going after a community that's based on a shared passion, you need a partner that speaks their language and can walk the walk as well. Whether it's Ubisoft or Intel, you need an agency that can shepherd those brands and develop campaigns that do exactly what they need them to do. And that's where agencies like Damage come in. Is we can't wait to help elevate other brands within the audience to gaming and esports. But that's what I would say.
and just looking towards the future, right? What does sort of the next 5 years look like for Damage, or if you want to talk to sort of agencies, creative agencies in general in the gaming space? One trend I've seen is because agencies have relationships with brands, some start to dabble in talent management also, right? Like, I'm curious where you see the future for Damage specifically, and what big trend you see in the next 5 years for creative agencies in the gaming space in general.
Yeah, sure. Well, our goal is to build our agency to be the top creative agency in the world for gaming, esports, and streaming with the top high profile brands. Where I see it's going, and we, for example, talent management agencies will always be valuable. And we prefer to be, a little agnostic and not kind of force our own talent on somebody, where we have relationships with different talent agencies. But where I see it going is it's just going to continue to rocket upwards. And Paul, you certainly know your way around the metaverse, and I know that's a hot topic right now. Damage is focused on gaming, esports, and streaming, and the metaverse begins with games. There will continue to be this greater overlap of our digital and physical lives in regards to wealth and socializing and shopping and entertainment. And in our opinion, that foundation is gaming. So if you understand that, you will be able to navigate the metaverse as well, which has only become more popular.
100% agree. Gaming, it's another buzzword, but fundamentally at its core, it's gaming. So, which is also why we're very excited about it. Now, I just want to get to everyone's favorite new segment. If you're new to the podcast, if you're listening to us for the first time, every single week with our amazing guests, what we've been doing is Judge Jimmy himself has been doing what we call Judge Jimmy's cross-examination.
Oh, boy.
And the fun part here is Jimmy's going to ask you 5 questions, Johnny, 5 or 6 questions, I think, and they're not gaming and esports related. So it's just looking to get a bit more into you as a person, give some insight to our audience into who you are, and hopefully have a little fun with it. Jimmy, go ahead.
No pressure, Johnny. And I almost hate tarnishing your awesome kind of answers, capping up, I think, the focus of the show here, but I have fun with this. So so thanks for being a good sport.
All right, hit me,
Let's
Jimmy.
see. First question. What is your favorite cuisine?
Mexican food.
Nice. I respect that. Great answer. Next question. What is your social media platform of choice?
Twitch.
Twitch. Nice.
I think that's the first Twitch we've got, which is ironic for a gaming podcast.
So let's build off of Twitch. What's your favorite streamer or category to watch on Twitch?
Dr. Lupo. We did some work with him. He is a phenomenal person, and I'll follow him
all day. I'll take it. We were speaking a lot about Arcane at the beginning of the show and Netflix. I don't want to get too into Squid Games with this one, but what was your favorite children's game growing up?
Yeah, I think this is going to age me too. Children's game. Well, this is weird. I'm going to just go video game, which nobody has heard of, and it's called The Bard's Tale. And that was kind of, we're talking, way back when, but The Bard's Tale was my buddy and I would spend literally 8 hours. We were those gamers back then, but it was just a different, it was nothing like the technology we have now. But it's a game called The Bard's Tale, and that was mine.
It's great game.
I was going to say I saw the respect and admiration in Paul's look when you said that. And I knew
I'm also
one major
old,
point.
so
I love it.
Last question, a little more serious. What's the one thing that keeps you up at night, that kind of either stresses you out or that keeps you focused on, I got to solve this problem or I got to address this thing?
Oh my God, what doesn't keep me up at night? I think the thing that legitimately keeps me up at night is that to quote Malcolm Gladwell, when that tipping point happens and every single one of them will have a gaming and esports AOR agency of record, because that's when my life would get really exciting and everybody at Damage get really excited. And I think the industry as a whole, if there's a category, an AOR category, that was gaming and esports.
A lot of fun, Johnny. Paul, the prosecution rests.
I actually love that last answer, because I think, I had a conversation with someone just this week, and Jimmy, you were on this call, where, some people still feel like they're late to the game, right? Like that they missed the boat on the gaming thing, and now it's too late to even look at it. And I always tell them, like, it's so early. Like we're not even close to that tipping point yet. Like, this is as big as it is today. We are so early. The opportunity is so massive. Like the kind of scale we're going to see is so large. Not early at all. So Johnny, I love that answer, and I couldn't agree more. I think it is interesting to think about when that tipping point actually happens. Johnny, how can people find you, follow Damage? Like, where can you be found if you want to be found?
I do want to be found. I'll give, I have no problem giving my email out. It's Johnny at damage-esports.com, JOHNNY at damage-esports.com. Or you can go to our website, which is obviously damage-esports.com, and check us out.
I love that. Thank you so much, Johnny, for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. I know our audience appreciates the insight. So great to talk about brands and the work you guys have done. As always, guys, just a quick reminder, we do a live stream every Wednesday evening, 8:30 Eastern time. Make sure to tune in. It's a lot of fun. It's all the news that doesn't make it into the podcast. And we do it with a big cast. And the best of all, we get to do it live with you guys. So you get to ask questions, get in our faces. And also make sure to follow us everywhere, on Twitter, on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it, Biz Esports or Business of Esports, everywhere. We really appreciate it. Tell your friends and family about the podcast. And as always, guys, we will see you next week.
Thank you for having me.